trash guy. People are always asking me, what's the most surprising thing you learned while working on garbology? And there's really no shortage of possible answers to that question. I mean, there's a sheer amount of trash the average American makes, 7 pounds a day. It continually blows me away. Or the fact that 40% of our food goes to the landfill, and if you could just shave 5 percentage points off of that, you could feed 2 million people with it. Or here's a good one, the fact that 93% of us in this room have measurable amounts of a hormone-disrupting plastic waste product in your bodies. You might want to rethink microwaving those takeout meals in the styrofoam, by the way. The big surprise that brings me here today is just how fascinated people are with the subject of trash. That really kind of was a shocker to me. They love talking about it. I've written 13 books, and by far, the subject I've been most often invited to campuses and communities to discuss is to talk trash. That's what they want. There's no contest. I think there's a part of the reason for that is the hidden world aspect of our waste. It's nature, where it ends up, where it comes from. People like to hear about that. And that's fascinating in itself because you need some pretty big blinders to hide the biggest thing we make. Because trash is, in fact, it's our biggest product. It's our leading export by volume and second place in terms of dollars. Our trash is apparently one of the most valuable things we make these days. But we hide it from ourselves with great skill. You know, we roll it to the curb each week. We make it disappear or appear to disappear. And we're really good at it. That's why we call it waste management. You know, it's an interesting term. A little fact, the average American community spends more on waste management than on school textbooks, on parks and recreation, or on fire safety. So it's a costly endeavor. So that 7 pounds a day translates into about 63% more than the average Dane. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself there. It's a little depressing, actually, that we are world champions of waste, that we are such a trashy people, and I don't, mean in the Kardashian TMZ sense of the word. We are the trash champions. And the cool thing about it, though, the opportunity inside the problem is that what I learned and what I talk about a lot concerning garbology is that as big a problem as waste is, it's the one big environmental, health, and social problem that really anyone can do something about and find that it pays off. You know, the Johnsons, this family you see here, are waste heroes of garbology. And they started on this journey of theirs when they had to downsize their home. They had a job change. It suddenly went from 3,000 square feet to 1,500 or 1,600. And they had a house full of stuff they had to get rid of. And they found it wasn't so hard after all, that half the stuff they had they didn't like, they didn't want, they should never have bought in the first place. And that led them to really rethink and do a reboot of their consumer habits. So they got rid of packaged goods. They started emphasizing fresh food. They created their own zero-waste buying guide, sort of the Craigslist before Costco approach to consumption. And when they were, at the end of the day, at the end of a year, they had reduced their waste after recycling and composting so much they could fit what was left in a mason jar. I mean, they're pretty extreme, okay? Not everybody's going to be able to do that. But the waste reduction lowered their household, you can't see the graphic there, but take my word for it. It says it lowered their household expenses by 40%. So there was a big payoff to their waste reduction, which is kind of cool. I go to parts of the country to talk about this where, the environmentalism is a big sell, but 40% savings, suddenly they want to say, how can we do that? So in order to see the value of an empty trash can, you really have to get a look at what your trash looks like. So one of the characters I write about at the beginning of Garbology is a married couple in the Chicago area, the Gastons. He's a retired chemist, retired teacher. You see them in better days. As they grew old and infirm, they stopped throwing things away. They hoarded everything, and until finally they were rescued near death, buried beneath their own trash. The neighbors hadn't seen them in a while, you know. And what I like about their story is, you know, you might ask, how can we learn from such aberrant behavior? And the answer is, we're looking in the mirror. The amount of waste in that home, 5 to 6 tons, is exactly normal for the 2 years it took the Gastons to accumulate. This is what we all look like, except we all hoard it in landfills instead of living rooms, as the Gastons did. I spent a lot of quality time at LA's Garbage Mountain. It was the world's, or rather the nation's largest active landfill when I was working on garbology. You wouldn't believe the stuff you see thrown away there. You know, it's 60 years it took to build this, 130 million tons, 12th tallest structure in LA. They have drones and fireworks there to chase off the scavenger seagulls. They have crews, wranglers who chase plastic bags blowing like tumbleweeds across the top. You know, there's stuff that gets thrown out there, pianos, furniture. I saw a truckload of jacuzzis thrown out, all kinds of treasure in the trash. It's the Disneyland of dumps. They have tours of the place. So the problem with landfills, though, there's a lot of problems with landfills. There's a lot of value locked in there, but also they leak this stuff out of the bottom. It threatens groundwater. They pour off so much methane. They put a power plant on top of Garbage Mountain. It makes enough electricity from methane, a really potent greenhouse gas, to power 50,000 homes from rotting trash. This is not a good energy model, but at least they're doing something with it. You know, we're so far behind other countries on the waste front. Look at the top. You have countries like Austria and Germany, no landfilling per se. Denmark became energy independent, in part by using waste-to-energy plants to use their trash as fuel. That's the incineration category you see there. You know, so now you have trash is also a national and energy security factor. You know, they don't import any oil in Denmark because they figured out what to do with their trash. Then there's the trash that get away. You've probably read about plastic pollution in the ocean, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's not big pieces of floating trash that's the problem. It's this little plastic chowder that comes from the single largest category of our trash, containers and packaging, most of which is plastic. Who thought it was a great idea to have disposable items made out of materials that never decompose, that never break down? I mean, look at the plastic grocery bag is the perfect storm of disposable insanity. It has a useful life of measured in minutes or hours, and a waste life that lasts for centuries. And so you get all this stuff, which becomes this in our oceans, and which becomes this in our food chain. Small fish eating plastic instead of plankton, carrying toxins into their bodies and being eaten by larger fish. We're all part of a lab experiment, in case you didn't notice it, plastic in our food chain. Scientists are just beginning to understand what that's doing to us. So there's a few story elements of the problem with waste. You know, I think it's important to also tell the story of the way back, and that's what gets people, and particularly college students, excited. I was recently in Georgia. You can see different parts of the country have greater or lesser commitments to recycling. I was at Columbus State University, and they were really charged up about the idea of recycling. They said, look, Georgia's only got 5.7% recycling. We hear about cities like San Francisco, 70%. And then one student says, how do we even talk about that here and not sound like a bunch of over-conscientious hippies? You know, that was his words. And, you know, it's a legitimate question. And the way we started talking about trash, though, was that it represented an opportunity rather than a problem. I mean, you know, it's not much of a struggle to raise up 5.7% recycling to something better, and it creates jobs. It creates a revenue stream. For campuses, it becomes a fundraising activity. There's a lot of opportunity locked in our waste, and areas like Georgia, where you see the low percentage, they have a huge opportunity before them to really turn that around. And if you don't, the other part of the discussion was, if you don't believe me, go talk to the hippies who run Walmart. Waste reduction is their business model now. They shrink packaging. They've cut their landfilling by 80%. They shred their plastic hangers when they're done with them and make dog beds out of them that they sell. Same with their food waste. They compost and sell it. They've turned revenue from a cost into a profit center. I'm sorry, they've turned trash from a cost to a profit center. It turns the idea of being green on its head, that it's not a cost and a burden. When you're being green about waste, you create an opportunity to have a positive economic result as well as a positive environmental result. a lot of the trash story is about the incentives and habits and marketing that sort of makes disposable products and wasteful products seem like conveniences and lifestyle enhancers. But once you start plugging into the idea that that's not the case, I've visited universities that have become laboratories for waste reduction and finding that opportunity locked in our trash. Marymount University did Garbology as a campus read, and they have their paper use. They use this blue cleaning system, no chemicals, no plastic bottles, getting rid of plastic disposable water bottles, getting rid of the clamshells we were talking, styrofoam. They were going through thousands of those a week. It's only a 1,000-student campus, and now they're doing reusables. University of New Mexico copied the art at the dump program from San Francisco, where they're making art out of trash. So trash is kind of a habit. Wastefulness is what we do every day. We make all this trash. It can seem insurmountable, but I want to tell you to close with the last story about the bag ban in Los Angeles. They banned plastic grocery bags. It was a couple of years ago. Now it's a statewide thing in California. And if you really had to have a disposable bag, you had to pay a dime for a paper bag. Lots of communities are starting to look at this and adopting this, but it was very controversial. And I remember the first day it kicked in, I was at the store, people were so angry, they didn't want to pay a dime. Those bags are supposed to be free, they weren't going to do it. They were carrying their groceries out to the parking lot in their arms, they were dropping cans on their toes, and rolling across the parking lot. It was a disaster, and everyone was saying, we got to repeal this, we can't have it. Well, also they were worried about what to do with the dog poop, so, that almost bagged the bag ban, but it didn't. They didn't repeal, and a year later, what does it look like in Los Angeles? 75% reduction in the use of disposable bags. People are bringing their own bags, but it's just not that big a deal. Apparently, life is possible without plastic grocery bags. Even walking your dog, they're still doing it, so, And the kicker is, we think these problems are insurmountable. But all it took was one thin dime to change a community of 8 million people and their practice, their love for a very trashy product. Just a dime. Things change. Thank you.